Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, the host of the Smart Business Revolution podcast. And as you know, I talk with all kinds of interesting CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies and organizations like YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, LendingTree, OpenTable, Axe Software, and many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help to connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And we've done a number of interviews now with different Vistage chairs. Those of you who haven't heard of Vistage before, it is a peer-to-peer group. Our guests will explain more about what it does, but it helps CEOs and top executives to gather in small groups and get feedback and swap ideas in a small group format. And so today I'm really excited because we have Ed Robinson. Ed is the president and founder of Capacity Building Solutions, Inc., a consulting firm. He started in June 2002, focusing on business management and organizational development for small and medium-sized businesses and community-based nonprofits. He also, though, is a master chair, which means one of the top performing chairs in the Vistage International Organization. He heads up 5 different business leader peer groups. It's an invitation-only CEO, business owner, peer leadership development organization, as I mentioned a moment ago. So we're going to get into that in a second. But first, before we do, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25 Media. Rise 25 helps B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And if you're listening to this and you're curious about starting a podcast, I'd say it's one of the best things that I've done in the past 10 years of doing it. And I tell everyone they should do it. We specialize in helping B2B businesses with a high client lifetime value. So if you are interested in learning more, you can go to rise25media.com, or you can also email us at support@rise25media.com. All right, so Ed, it's a pleasure having you here today. And you got this interesting story because you went and you get your business degree, you get your MBA, and then you join a entity called Community Wealth Ventures, which was helping nonprofits to start for-profit initiatives or endeavors or separate businesses in support of their larger mission. I'd never heard of that type of focus before. And so talk a little bit about what you did with that organization.
Yeah, it's the field of social enterprise. So it's a term of art in a nonprofit space, which is, nonprofits always looking for ways to diversify their revenue. And the founder of CWV, as you used to call it, Bill Shore, had done a really good job doing cause-related marketing and helping folks start business ventures. So he turned it into a business. And it still exists today, where they help nonprofits form partnerships with corporations, help them start business ventures, and also help them do organizational capacity building. So that was about 20 years ago. I wanted to give back. I wanted to make a difference. And Bill wrote this wonderful book called Revolution of the Heart. It really intrigued me. And I said, wow, I can take my business skills and bring it to the nonprofit space and help them start businesses and diversify their revenues. So, of course, what happens is what inevitably happens is you help enough people start businesses and you get the business bug yourself and you decide you want to go out on your own. So that's what happened to me back in 2002.
And how was it in the early days when you decided to go out on your own? You'd gotten your MBA, so you had the academic background in it, but of course it's always different when you're doing it yourself. So what was it like when you first started?
Well, one of the best things I think now where I'm very helpful to my clients was before when I did consulting and I came out of business school and I worked for Manhattan for E&Y before that and for Gallup. A lot of it was very theoretical, right? You're in professional services and you're supposed to be objective and you step back and you help other people start businesses. The best thing I could have done to be a consultant or be a coach is to start my own business, literally from scratch, and understand exactly what folks went through. At the time when I launched my business, my son was about 2.5 years old, and I had a daughter coming in 2 months. So it was a very critical juncture in my life, and I just felt this passion this yearning for starting my own thing and working specifically around leadership developments. And so I just rolled the dice and it ended up working out.
Yeah, I remember when I started my first business, my oldest son was 1 year old, so I had a 1-year-old at home, and yeah, it was a little bit of a crazy time to do that when you have a youngster at home. Did people think you were nuts at the time and say, "Why are you leaving this organization when you've got one kid, a second one on the way?"
Well, I always think it's sometimes when you look back in retrospect, if I take the me of today and I go back, wait a second. You have a young son, you have another baby on the way, you just bought your first real house a few years ago, and you've got a great job working for a great organization with good benefits, and you decide to start a business. Doesn't make a lot of logical sense, right?
No.
So I wonder if a lot of people, if they'd go back and do it again, would they actually with their current perspective? But you know what? There's something in life I think happens to every entrepreneur, every business person, where you just feel like you have to bet on yourself. You have to give it a try. And I felt at that point, I'd been working at a business school for about 7-8 years, and I had worked before that. So I had about 10 years of professional services under my belt and business school. Felt it was as good a time as any. And I also looked around and I saw other people who were doing it. And I'd been at conferences representing the other organizations saying, I just clearly can do that as well. So why not give it a shot?
Do you remember where your initial early clients came from?
Oh, yeah. Well, I started, since I had moved from Community Wealth Ventures and started my own thing, I had started a peer-based group of nonprofit leaders in the DC metro area. So
Aside from, this is not with Vistage, something different, like on your own?
Before Vistage. Actually, I found out of Vistage because I had started my own peer group model with nonprofit leaders. We got funded by several foundations. I didn't know Vistage even existed. So I still don't remember. I forget how I met this Vistage chair at the time, but I had him come speak to my group. And he spoke to my group, and I was figuring this all out on the fly. I didn't know anybody else was doing this. He said, hey, we've been doing this since 1957. We've got this down. And the more I learned about what he did and what some of his colleagues did, I got really intrigued, saying, wow, there's this organization, this international organization that does this all the time. And quite frankly, it was a great bolt-on to starting my business, to be able to become a Vistage Chair, which is a subcontractor to this national organization, which gave me a national brand, an international brand to work with right away, and training and those connections.
Right. And because I was going to ask you about that, because you start your capacity building solutions, you start your company in 2002, and you've been a Vistage Chair since 2003. So it wasn't that much later that you joined Vistage, or you become part of Vistage.
Well, I like to believe that I pay attention and try to make good decisions. So I'm going, okay, I can start this thing from scratch all on my own, or I can partner with this organization and make this a part of my practice. Yeah. And with Vistage, you get so much. You get an international network of speakers. You get some of the best trainers in the world, right? You get Vistage's marketing and advertising. Plus, you get a peer group of local professionals who are kind of a support group for you. So it's kind of the best of both worlds to me. I still had the freedom to do my own thing and my own gigs, but I also had this subcontracting model. So I figured it made sense for somebody starting a business, because what I'll tell everybody in business, there's nothing more important than recurring revenue. If you can get recurring revenue model in your business, if you can build that on an ongoing basis, it makes the other stuff and taking risks much easier.
So from a business perspective for you, that's what the Vistage provided for you. You have consulting and coaching projects, which are non-recurring or that can go up and down, that sort of thing. But the Vistage side, or the peer-to-peer group side for your business from the get-go, was the recurring side.
Yeah, I mean, they say the typical Vistage member stays in about 6 or 7 years. Okay, so that's not many consultants have clients and CEO clients who stick around for 6 to 7 years, let alone dozens or more of them. Yeah. So it was pretty good. If you went in there and you did your job, you would have this recurring revenue stream. Plus, you were making those connections, which potentially could help your business on the outside as well.
Right, right. So, we're recording this in July of 2020, and the, coronavirus pandemic still continuing to unfold. But back then, when you started, 2002, 2003, we were kind of emerging from the dot-com meltdown, not post 9/11 time period. What was it like to start a business at that time?
Well, see, I've always believed that in some way I'm in a counter-cyclical business, and that this is the time people need advice and counsel the most. So actually, now what was interesting back in 2002 compared to today, the field of executive coaching was still somewhat emerging, I would say, in the late 90s and early 2000s. Now it's pretty much accepted. I mean, every day you get an inquiry from somebody looking for a coach. But that back then it wasn't so standard. So leaders had this sense that they needed something. And Vistage gave me a platform to connect them with other leaders and expert speakers. So the smart leaders. And this is the deal. With Vistage in my work, I'm not trying to work with every CEO or business owner. Really, I'm not interested in that. I'm trying to work with those folks who really see the benefits of their own development and the development of their people, and they want to push the envelope on growth. They don't see investment in professional services or leadership development as an expense. They see it as an investment, and they want to see a return on their investment. So the smart leaders, that small percentage who tend to do well during a recession, and in every recession and every downturn, there is a smaller group of business owners who grow their market share, who grow their top line, who grow their bottom line, who acquire talent that wasn't available before. Those are the ones who lean into their challenges, and that's who we're looking for. So in some strange way, I like to believe that I'm in a business where there is more pain externally for business owners to navigate. They need someone to help them work through it. And I'm just one part of that puzzle for them.
Tell me some stories. It's been 17, 18 years since you've been doing these peer-to-peer groups. Give me some stories or some examples of, you don't have to obviously violate confidentiality or anything, but some businesses or CEOs that have come through your groups and what you've seen them get out of being part of a peer-to-peer group like that, just being part in the mix with, meeting with their peers on a regular basis, and how you've seen it contribute to their bottom line or their top line.
Yeah, well, I tell all the members of my groups, and I'm not going to make the claim for other people, but when someone joins my group, I tell them, look, you will double your top line and you will triple your bottom line in the first 5 to 7 years at minimum. I have had members go from $3-4 million of revenue to $50 million of revenue. I've had members go from $10-15 million of revenue to $100 million of revenue. I've had people who were living in their house with roommates running their businesses to selling their business for tens of millions of dollars who now own multiple houses. So I like to believe on the standard metrics of business success, we outperform all the major indices. If you look how Vista's members perform, for example, 98% of our folks got their PPP funding first time around. Against all the major stock indices, we outperform them. So there's something about this Vistage model where a small percentage of business owners invested in their own development who want to work with a peer group and share best practices tend to do very well in business. So those success stories, I have loads of those. I've had 6 people sell their business in the last couple of years in excess of $150 million. Okay, it does happen. But I think success is relative. I'm just as happy when I take the entrepreneur who just started their business, who's trying to push through the $1 million mark, and we get them to $2.5-3 million, a place they've been struggling to get through their whole life. Quite frankly, I'm very happy when I'm part of a family transition, one generation to the next. We all know the failure rate of family business transitions, but if I can be part of that and making that work, helping folks buy businesses, look at opportunities and acquire businesses and grow market share and enter new markets, that excites me. Then on the personal end, we always say in Vistage, and I believe in my work overall, that I'm trying to change the world for the better, one leader at a time. And you don't draw a line between your home life and your personal life, right? And what happens is there's a lot of talk about balance in life. And I do believe that balance is a little bit of an illusion. What we're looking for is being in the moment and having quality time with whomever we're with at that time. So what I want to try and show my members is you can be successful, you can hit your top line and your bottom line targets, and you can have a happy marriage, and you can have a good relationship with your peers, and you can have friendships that are long lasting and enduring, right? That you can, I don't like to say have it all, but you don't have to settle. So I'm quite frankly just as happy as about helping that business owner keep his marriage going when it went through a difficult time. So I am somebody selling their business for $10 million. I'm just as happy having someone hand their business off to their son and make sure that's successful transition, and that son can pay for that person's retirement, as I am with somebody making an acquisition for $6-10 million, right? I've seen folks literally change their life and change the life of others. I happen to work with an ESOP. That's awesome, getting to see an employee-owned company and how that can benefit employees. And that CEO just takes extreme pride in the fact that he's procuring the retirement for literally hundreds of people who probably wouldn't have another vehicle for doing that. So I try to meet people where they're at. And yes, very, very successful stories. I work with some companies who have over $1 billion in revenue, and that's great. And they're dominating markets all over the place. I get thrilled and excited by that. But I also like the person who could never get past work with a person who couldn't get past the $5 million ceiling, and now they're at $10 million. Or the person who didn't realize they could sell their business for a 10 times multiple and turn around and seed other business owners with those proceeds, right? It's about doing good through business, through leaders, because my belief always has been, you want to have a vibrant community, you want to solve a lot of the social problems in life, have a vibrant entrepreneurial class. Entrepreneurs, 85% of employees in this country are hired by small businesses, not corporations. Corporations shift their jobs overseas, right? They're not really growing the net number of employees. In fact, we can see in newspapers, they quickly downsize. But if you have a healthy entrepreneurial class, if you have healthy small business owners, they're hiring people. They're hiring people who can buy that first car, who can make their mortgage, who can send their kids to school. And they take great pride in that. The best entrepreneurs, the best small business owners, they define success in many different ways. It's not just about money, although money is an important scorecard. They make a difference. And that's what I do to help people make a difference. I just say I help the few who help the many.
It seems like that's kind of what you were originally attracted to about the original job that you went into after you got your MBA. I want to ask you, so, a skeptic might say that, the CEOs that are drawn to join a group like Vistage, they would have done it anyways. Or maybe it's the types of people that are going to drive a business forward that are drawn originally to a group like Vistage. So what is it about, you think, the peer-to-peer format that leads these businesses to grow? Is it the discipline of just meeting with a bunch of peers? Is it being able to take a challenge to the group and get feedback on it? Is it the fact that you got this peer pressure and everyone else is improving? Or is it all of these different things? What is it practically, you think, that going to I think it's a monthly meeting, having these educational trainings, what is it about the nature of doing that on a consistent basis over 6 years, 10 years, whatever, that leads these businesses to grow? Or is it all of the above?
Well, I think you did a pretty good job answering the question, but let me start with what you said first and foremost. Let me ask you a question. The fact that Harvard attracts the best and the brightest students to its campus, does that make their teachers any less effective?
I suppose not.
Right. So I make no apologies. In fact, as I said before, I only want to work with the top 5 to 10% of business owners, the people who want to push the envelope, the people who would probably be somewhat successful already. I believe Vistage is a catalyst. It propels people forward. It accelerates. Am I under some kind of belief that it's only their involvement in Vistage and their work with me that has made them successful? No, I work with special people. They are, by their very definition, special people. They are people who want to share their best practices and be vulnerable with peers, and every month commit to getting better. Those are special people. Those are the people who lead societies, not just businesses. But do we accelerate their success? Well, what is the best evidence of whether they're getting value or not? They would walk, right? So if the average member is sticking around 6 or 7 years in a Vistage group, I have some members who predate me in my group. I have many members who've been in Vistage over 10 years. I have colleagues who've got many members in Vistage over 20 years. They stick around for a reason. And business owners don't make dumb decisions, right? especially the good ones. They think through their investments. They're sticking around because they see the value. So maybe if they're getting where they are with 85, 90% of the raw talent and ability and what they're doing, maybe Vistage just gives them that extra 5 or 10%. And I'm hoping that's what happens.
Right.
But I want to work with the best and the brightest. And I want to work with people who want to become the best and the brightest.
Right.
And in terms of the skeptics who think they got it all figured out, good, have at it. I'm happy for you. And I wish you the best of success.
Related to that, I want to ask you about that. I'm sure over 17 years, you've seen some people who come into the community, but they're not a good fit for whatever reason. Maybe they won't let their guard down. Maybe they're not vulnerable enough. What are some things that you've seen where people don't get results out of it due to whatever reason? What causes people to not thrive in that kind of environment?
Well, I can tell you've interviewed other Vistage chairs because you have some good answers in your questions.
I hope I'm not seeding the answer too much.
No, but it's really great. Well, and I would say that Vistage is a very chair-specific experience. So I would never speak on behalf of other colleagues. They run their groups how they run their groups. I'll just talk about my experience and where I find that someone doesn't really at least get the maximum benefit, nor does the group get the maximum benefit from the participation. First is you have to do the work. Okay, you have to show up and do the work. So we have a one-on-one coaching model. You need to prepare for your coaching sessions. You need to know what you want to work on. Secondly, you got to tell the truth. You know, a lot of entrepreneurs spend a lot of their time spinning. They're spinning their bank. They're spinning their investors. Sometimes they're spinning their spouses, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, because they're by their nature optimists, and they believe it's all going to work out. You have to be real honest. I'm very proud is that in the last major recession that we had, I didn't lose a member. None of my guys went out of business. One person sold this business, but you know why? Because there were no surprises. You need to be transparent. And I've had some people say, I'm not comfortable sharing my numbers. I said, well, I can understand that and I respect that, but if you're going to be in my group or you're going to work with me individually, I need to see your numbers. I need to see your information because I know how you guys kind of massage the truth sometimes. Okay. Yeah. So they have to be willing to be vulnerable, be transparent, be honest. And here's the thing about a peer group, which is really important. You get what you give. So there's a lot of people and they show up with kind of, what are you going to give me? What am I going to get? What am I going to get? Right. And they look to their colleagues and the best way to get in life is to give. So cultural anthropology would say that groups want everybody, a group will perform to the level of its lowest member. So groups by their very nature, people want to associate with like-minded groups who are successful. So if you show up to a group and you genuinely care about and you're interested in the success of other people, right? And you want to be useful. Peter Drucker talks about if you do one thing in life, be useful. So if you show up to these meetings and you want to be useful, right? And you want to see your peers excel, guess what? By the very nature of that rubs off on you and they want you to excel. So there's a lot of people who don't realize this is a two-way relationship, right? And I tell them all the time, I have a lot of tools in my pocket, but I can't pull a rabbit out of a hat every single month, right? So if you show up and you don't know what you want to talk about or you don't want to use the group as an asset, I really can't help you. Vistage isn't a spectator sport. Right? And then if I look at my consulting work, it's the same thing. I'll come there ready to work. You can count on me giving my A+ game. When I show up to my meeting with you, you got my full attention and I'm prepared. But I expect the same. And I think a lot of people just expect consultants or coaches to show up and work magic. And that's not the way it works. And then they get frustrated. You don't have this fairy dust that you can sprinkle on them and make everything okay. No. What's really going on? What's happening? How can we help? What have you tried? The other thing that people get frustrated is they confuse coaching with consulting. And I do both, so it can be confusing for me sometimes. What I'm trying to do as a coach is ask the tough questions so you come up with the answers. I'm trying to develop that muscle for you because I want you to develop that muscle because if you do develop that muscle, you get better at it. So inevitably, more challenges will come your way. You work on that skill. You'll be able to handle them better. When you hire me as a consultant, I come in, typically you're hiring me because I bring answers or some skills to the table, which you need to rent for a period of time, right? So sometimes folks get frustrated and they say, can you just tell me the answer? Tell me what to do. No, I'm here to help you think through what you should do. And by the way, your situation, your context can be completely different than that over here. So we got to really think it through. And by the way, here's the thing about coaching and consulting, right? If you do what I tell you to do and it fails, it's my fault, regardless of how you implement, right?
Right.
But if you do what you designed to do, right, then you own it. And people typically own what they design and engineer, right? So that's what I'm trying to get buy-in from them. If they're honest, if they want to do the work, if they want to help other people, and guess what? They have to like to learn. I sometimes annoy my members because I send them lots of articles and I recommend lots of books, but you're never done learning. I have some people who will speak with pride when I've never read a business book. I don't need to read a business book. Once again, good for you. I'm happy for you. God bless you. But you know what? There's so much to learn, only so much time. And you need to sharpen your pencil. And as a business owner, that's your brain. So you need to constantly be committed to learning new things and applying new things and experimenting, right? You don't want to solve tomorrow's problems with yesterday's solutions. Now, sometimes they may apply, but not always. You want to stay on top of everything. So I tell my members, read the Wall Street Journal every day. Read the Harvard Business Review. Read McKinsey Quarterly, right? Make sure you're constantly feeding your brain with new information. Sloan Review from MIT is another one, right, that comes out. I mean, there's lots of stuff you could be doing. So you got to want to learn. And it doesn't have to be reading. It could be podcasts. But are you developing yourself? Are you developing your people? Are you putting forth the work? Are you prepared? And you know what? We step out of a business context, you'd say the same thing about athletes, high-performing athletes. You'd say the same thing about high-performing musicians, right? The same thing about high-performing nonprofit leaders, right? The best people do the work. They're always prepared. They're always learning. They're willing to be vulnerable. They're willing to help and ask for help. I tell my clients two things. The two most important things you can say as a leader is, I don't know and I need help. There's a lot of guys who think that the approach to leadership would be like John Wayne. If you admit you don't know, and if you ask for help, you're weak. No, that you only get so far in life if that's the way you think. And I'm not interested in hitting my ceiling. I'm still too young yet.
And John Wayne was a cowboy, right? So we don't need cowboys. So as we record this, we're in July 2020. The pandemic has been continuing to unfold. What are you seeing in businesses that are pivoting, that are adapting to the new reality? How are they tackling the changes that are happening, and how are you helping them to navigate this new reality that we're in?
Well, my job is to try and simplify the complex. So I start with some very basic premises. Business is about math, and business is about people. So quite frankly, the people get through this okay. They understand their business math. They'll proactively manage against that business math. And they've done their job to assemble and motivate and lead the right group of people. So for example, I was telling my folks not too long ago, it was actually in the early fall, right, that we knew something was coming. There was talk of a slight bump in a recession. So I give them an annual goal planning document in October, and as part of the planning this year, I had them do contingency planning. What if analysis? What if your revenues drop? What if your best person left? I didn't know that was going to be prescient, right? I had no idea we were going to hit this catastrophe. But what I want folks to realize is that they need to understand their numbers and their math because they create triggers for decision making. So you don't want to go into a crisis with no money left on your line of credit, right? You don't want to go into a crisis with an inefficiency in your business model, which makes your profit margins subpar industry-wide, right? You want to have some margin for error. You want to have working capital, right? So you want to have all those things. So you want to make proactive decisions. I've been through several recessions now, and here's what you want to do. Right before the downturn, you want to start making cuts, and sometimes aggressive cuts, before the downturn, or right when the downturn starts to hit, before everybody else, right? You want to strengthen your position. That buys you time. So you can actually make investments before everybody else can on the way up. Because a lot of people wait too late to make difficult financial decisions. And as a result, they exhaust their access to capital and maximize their debt load. So what do? And they're having compressed margins. They're generating less money to pay more debt, and they have less discretionary investment capital. As opposed to, let me keep some powder, let me think this through. And right now, those business owners, what are they seeing? Well, on the people side of the equation. You know, it was pretty hard to find certain positions not too long ago. Right now, if you're looking for certain skill positions, you'll get 100 resumes in the next week, right? So now talent is here, and guess what? Supply and demand. The market corrects. That HR director you had to pay $115,000 for just 4 or 5 months ago, you might be able to get for $95,000 now, right? So what they do is they make investments in people. And here's the deal. I did a lot of turnaround work when I was young, when I was there. And we used to talk about you have to be able to fertilize the tree as well as prune it. So even in a difficult period, you have to make investments, right? And people don't get that. And one of the biggest knee-jerk reactions that people make in a downturn is they cut. They just cut because they're scared. No. You reduce and you invest, right? You look at your business model, you get some flexibility, right? You outsource. You get 3 ways you get capacity. You build it, you buy it, or you rent it. Leverage all 3. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get my people, look, be smart, make good financial decisions proactively, and then make investments when you see opportunity. And guess what? We're probably over the next 5 to 10 years going to see more businesses for sale by baby boomer business owners than we've seen in the last 25 to 30 years. Okay. Why? Because of demographics and because of economy. What's going to happen then? You're going to see the prices of those businesses go down. So inorganic growth becomes less expensive. And at the same time, if you're smart, you're making investments in talent, you'll increase your probability for organic growth, right? But leadership is an intentional activity. It's a reflective, intentional, thoughtful activity. You have to step back, anticipate what's going on, and then make proactive, positive moves. And you have to make those moves quickly and decisively. And guess what? This is not a popularity contest. Sometimes you have to make some difficult decisions. But by making those difficult decisions sooner, you don't have to make worse decisions later. And there's nothing sadder than a business owner who has exhausted their resources in a difficult environment trying to protect the jobs of people and then has to go out of business.
Yeah.
Everybody loses.
I don't know if maybe it's my circumstances around me, but I feel like this time a lot of business owners made really quick decisions compared to 2008. Did you get that feeling, or maybe perhaps it's just my own subjective perception?
I think, one of the most dangerous things we can do as human beings is act out of fear, right? And so we have this unknown fear. Well, first off, I hate general terms. Business owner. There was essential business owners and non-essential business owners as defined by our governor, right? So guess what? You're running a restaurant, and we have a sad story here in town of a guy who just bought a beautiful restaurant, young guy. I was so excited for him, and all of a sudden he couldn't have customers.
Ugh, awful.
I mean, that is difficult, but there are some essential businesses that didn't skip a beat, right? So I think people got afraid. And there were all sorts of types of resources stoking that fear, right? Because this great unknown virus, was it going to hit? How big was it going to be? Were there going to be millions of people dying around us? Were all our customers going to go away? Were the banks going to freeze credit? So the worst thing to do is to make knee-jerk, fear-based decisions, right, in an economic downturn. Right? I tell all of my clients, your job is to be the lighthouse. In the midst of the storm and the choppy, rocky waters, you're there to be the lighthouse. You're there as a sense of security and stability, despite of the choppy seas, right? People can see, right? And a business owner, the worst thing to do, unless, of course, your life is in jeopardy and it's a life or death situation in that moment. The worst thing to do is react quickly out of fear and out of emotion. And I felt a lot of people doing that. There's also some other things which I think, which is a different conversation. But because of that fear, I think our government reacted out of fear, right? So they further stoked that fear. Oh my God, everybody's going to be out of job. We got to start having business owners service the unemployment office. We've got to tell people they don't have to pay their mortgage, they don't have to pay their car loan. The sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. You know, and the sky wasn't falling, and it hasn't fallen, and it's not going to fall. It's just a difficult period of time in our country's history that we have to work through.
Right. Well, I hope that all business owners will listen to your words. That was really, really reassuring in the way that you encapsulated it. So thank you so much for that, Ed. I'm going to wrap things up with the question I always ask, which is, let's pretend we're at an awards banquet, much like the Oscars or the Emmys, and you're receiving an award for lifetime achievement for everything you've done up until this point. What we all want to know is, who do you thank? In addition to family and friends, who are the people you would acknowledge in your remarks?
Well, there are several people. A person I look to as my mentor, who I learned so much from in life, was a gentleman called Gary Mulhare. Gary's out in the Pacific Northwest, and I had the good fortune to work with him for a number of years. And everything Gary touches turns to gold. And he was just, he's one of those business guys. He created a whole business model wrapped around ex-offenders that became self-sustaining. It was the social enterprise model. Multiple businesses that were self-sustaining, helping people who others deemed as unemployable. And Gary just has this guy is that there's no problem you can't solve if you think it through, right? And he just has this amazing belief in his own capability to solve problems and in the power of people to step up if given the opportunity. So when I sit back and I think about business leaders, I think about Gary all the time. And I have to be honest, as a Vistage Chair, I feel like I have this front row seat to some amazing people. Yes, I'm their coach. And when I started, I was only 37, so I was younger than a lot of them. Now I'm slowly getting into that kind of mid-50s range where maybe I'm getting to the average, right? Or the high average anyway. But I got to watch these people in action. I'm in a learning laboratory. I got to watch so many of them deal with difficult challenges, make big bets, turn around their companies. So I have so many Vistage members I've learned from, and Vistage colleagues. I mean, my goodness, you know, there's that saying, you stand on the shoulder of giants. I can't believe I'm plugged into this organization, have access to these people, that they just have done such remarkable things for so long with so many people. They provide me with data and information unselfishly. So I'd say my Vistage Chair colleagues, the Vistage community, has been amazing and supportive of me, my individual clients. And I'm not going to name individual clients because I love them all equally. But some of them through the years have greatly affected me in positive ways. Although Wayne Coffey is now a Vistage Chair, and he was one of my best members, and just everything he did was first class and highly professional. And Wayne was just a model for that to me. And I always look up to Gary. And I guess if I go back to the very beginning, I've always had an affinity for leaders and local leaders. And, you know, the guy who ran the corner grocery at the end of our street, you know, how when people didn't have money, he helped them out. You know, how when he knew the kids who were struggling a little bit, hey, here's a hot chocolate, you have to stand out in the snow. To the person in the pizza parlor who you watched, give free slices to people somebody knew was down in their luck, but also the softball team that they went. So I've been inspired by so many small business owners. And then I go back to business schools and professors, or great professors like Al Visari was just this amazing business school. Dave Butt was this amazing business school professor who got me to think differently. And then my work at Ernst & Young, I was thrown into the deep end in Manhattan, working with these CEOs of academic medical centers, dealing with very difficult challenges. And they were just amazing. And some of the partners there were just amazing. I've just been blessed every step along the way to be surrounded by a community of people who just did amazing things, were incredibly helpful to me. But I will always have a soft spot for Gary because he's someone I aspire to be like one day.
Ed Robinson, Capacity Building Solutions, Inc., www.capacity-building.com. Where else can people go to connect with you or learn more about you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. So hopefully you'll see my content coming through LinkedIn. And by the way, I just redid my website. There's some videos and there's a lot of content. I pride myself in the content there. I am on Twitter and I am on Facebook. So I'm on all the social media. They can find me there. Hopefully now I see that if you type me into Google, it's pretty easy for me to pop up these days. But I'm there. I'm out there. And I'm ready to help.
Great. Ed, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.